wanted to like this book. I really did. The second one built up just a terrific cliffhanger, and this book kind of wasted it by opening with everyone being okay and in Hawaii. So you know that everything worked out for them. In fact, they tell the story of how they escaped twice because both Arlene and Flynn have conflicting ideas of what actually happened. There are a lot more perspectives in this one as well. Let's talk about the story first. The first thing that I want to mention about the story is just the authors made this way too confusing at times. Instead of just having one narrator per chapter, which I liked a lot more, I didn't like that we had 4 different perspectives, but I liked the fact that it was just one person telling the story. In this one, it's 2 perspectives per chapter, so about halfway through, it shifts from whoever was telling the story to someone new. I wouldn't say that I liked this at all. It was really distracting, and I did not like it. As I mentioned, we start out already in Hawaii, and we get Arlene and Flynn telling us how they got there. And, it makes a lot of sense. They jumped out of the window. Both of them agree on that. They both agree that they smashed through one of the windows in the lower floors and got away. They kind of disagree on how that happened, but they both agreed on it, so great. Then, this is the part that I thought was stupid. Jill apparently lands the plane back at the airport and is just kind of waiting for them. So they make the trek back from where they were back to the airport by stealing a bunch of cars, which, great, whatever. But then they get on the plane and fly back. So why? Why did they do that? Oh, and Ken hacked the energy shield, which made turning it off kind of pointless because they could have just had him hack it to begin with, but I'm thinking way too much about this. We get told that Hawaii is the last bastion of freedom after it's explained that Salt Lake City was destroyed with nuclear weapons, apparently. This comes out in Ken's only perspective that he talks about, and I wish that he was there more because he drops a whole bunch of stuff on us that would have been way more interesting than the story that we get. But that would have changed the book from more of like an action-adventure to something else. Ken explains that there's a whole bunch of other crap going on and that our people are going off to space on another trip. Jill apparently isn't going. She was at first hanging out with some creepy scientist who I was really hoping would die, and then that scientist died, so that was kind of cool. Jill is apparently, I don't know what the hell her point, like what she's doing in this. But she goes with them to LA, where the spaceship apparently is. So we've lost Ken, and we have all the other people. She goes out to LA with them. And they have this whole convoluted plan on how Jill is going to help them launch off in the spaceship and then make her way back to Hawaii. And you would think that she's going to stow away on the ship, or at least I did, but it turns out no. She gets stranded in LA because she misses the sub that was supposed to take her back to Hawaii, and she's just stranded in LA and then gone from the book entirely. So our 3 characters that we have remaining are Albert, Flynn, and Arlene, which is great, kind of. I mean, Albert's still doing his weird shit that he's been doing the entire time that he's been with us. And then we get another character named Hidalgo, who's kind of cool. I like Hidalgo. He's built up really well and everything. He's honestly the most interesting of these 4 characters. And then he's killed off at the very end of this completely unceremoniously. It's just, oh God, I hated it. So, yeah. We get to the end. They meet these other aliens, the friendly aliens. And it's explained that there's a war going on that's been going on for, I'm guessing, like 100,000 years or longer. And I can't remember how long it's in, but a very long time. And Earth is just kind of the latest spot in it. So the aliens decide that they're going to help Flynn and Arlene and the humans. They something happens to Albert. He gets burned up or something, so he's out of the picture. Then the two aliens, Arlene, Flynn, and Hidalgo go. They go to the bad aliens. And then there's a teleporter accident or something. Hidalgo ends up being all mutated and everything. Flynn kills him off. Then they go off on their little spaceship. They end up on another space. It's such a stupid story. They end up on another enemy spaceship. And then they end up going somewhere. So their spaceship gets blown up. They take over this base that the bad aliens were on. They then jump on one of the bad alien spaceships, and that apparently sends them off to some place, but they don't really know where, and that's where this book ends. It just kind of stops on another cliffhanger, but it's explained that they're going to be traveling in space for so long that they won't... Basically, everyone that they know is going to be dead. And that means that Arlene's never going to see Albert again, which kind of sucks because they finally get married, and that plot was wrapped up and then discarded into the trash can with a lot of the other stuff that was going on in this. I really didn't like this book's story that much, if you can't tell. Oh man. They brought in so much stuff that would have been great, and then they just kind of discarded it. But I'll save that for later on in this. So let's talk about the new characters in this. There are 3 that really kind of matter, that become main characters, and then there are a whole bunch of secondary characters that really don't do much in this. So the 3 characters that get added in that really matter are Sears, Roebuck, and Hidalgo. At least I think it could be Reebok, but I don't know. So Sears and Roebuck, they're the 2 aliens the good aliens that are kind of helping us out. And they're annoying. So their race apparently is a hive mind where everyone shares the same name. They kind of look like big gorilla type things. And they don't know how to talk to odd numbers of people. So it's very confusing, the way that they speak to our protagonists here. And that might be why they killed off Hidalgo, just because it was confusing for the aliens to talk to more than 2 people at a time. I have no idea why the authors wrote it like that, but they did. It just sort of creates more issues than it really does. The aliens they don't tell you everything that you would want to know, and it's sort of like talking to riddles and whatnot. It's basically them talking in kind of riddles and being vague about certain things, because they don't seem to know how much information to give the humans, and our human characters are kind of stupid and don't know what questions to ask or how to ask certain questions. It's kind of annoying that way. And we don't really get a perspective from them, because that would probably be really confusing, because they both are speaking at the same time, and yeah, it just wouldn't be all that great. But they are our link to like the greater alien world that's going on. And then we have Hidalgo, who is honestly the most interesting character in this, including all of the main characters that we had before. I honestly think Ken, Jill, and Hidalgo are the 3 most interesting characters. And unfortunately, Ken and Jill are gone from the frickin' book, so we don't really get a whole lot on them. And then Hidalgo, like I mentioned in the story part, he gets killed off just after all this build-up with his character, and us learning so much more about him than the other characters. At least more interesting stuff. You have Flynn talking in circles about nonsense about why he's a Marine. You have Arlene kind of just pining over whether or not you have her pining over Albert, and then you have Albert just having his weird internal debates with his morals and everything. And then you have Hidalgo, who's actually talking about some stuff that's way more interesting, about how he and his wife were going to get a divorce, how she aborted his baby, how they really hated each other at the end of their marriage, and how he'll never be able to reconcile anything with her because she was killed during the demonic invasion. That was all way more interesting than the others. And then Hidalgo dies, and his entire character story is gone. So, yeah, those were pretty much the new characters that we have. Unfortunately, yeah, I wish Hidalgo was in this more. But to go back to what Sears and Roebuck were talking about is this whole like galactic game that they're talking about. So this war has been going on between the good aliens and the bad aliens for just millennia on end. And there's no real end in sight, and the current situation of it is kind of like a stalemate. So you have these two sides that are just kind of making minor moves against each other. There's no real like grand battle happening. Even the battle over Earth is kind of like a minor skirmish that most of the aliens don't really care about. We kind of get the idea that there are just hundreds of alien species out there. Some are probably aligned with the evil aliens, some are with the good aliens, and Earth is just sort of a planet that exists, and the good aliens didn't move fast enough to actually stop the bad aliens from invading, and now they've sent like a very minor force of people to kind of stop them, or at least help the Earthlings. And they're not really going down to Earth to help, they're just kind of up in their space station, watching what's happening, and they chose like this moment to kind of intervene. It's a little weird the way it's set up, but it's very interesting the way they've kind of painted this picture of the galaxy. And I'll get more into this in the next section, but it just kind of dumps the whole alien invasion thing from the video game. Or not alien, sorry. It dumps the whole demonic invasion thing from the video games, where it was pretty much given that this was hell invading Earth in the video games. And here it's aliens doing it. So yeah, the fact that you have creatures that look like demons is just kind of a coincidence, and it doesn't really mean a whole lot. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of wished it was hell invading, because that would have been a little bit more interesting to me. Mostly because the alien stuff is just done so poorly, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because both the alien sides here seem pretty stupid. It's just with the way they're doing it, I don't really understand what's happening. And yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that you would imagine is going on, or how you would imagine an alien invasion would go, and it's just not played out like that. And it's just, I don't know. It's a very weird setting that the authors have created. And yeah, it leads to just my overall feelings of this book not being all that great, and kind of the overall plot going in a direction that I didn't really want it to go in, to be honest with you. Yeah, I like the ideas in the book, but there's a lot going on here that just seems kind of stupid and thrown together. So what do I like and dislike about this? I like some of the characters in this. I liked Jill's story about her kind of running around LA, like doing some little sabotage things. And I wanted to follow that plot more than the whole going into space thing. That just seemed way more interesting. I also thought Ken, his whole perspective on this was a lot more interesting than what Flynn, Arlene, and Albert were going to go do. I liked Hidalgo's character way more than I liked the other characters in this. I liked his plot or his subplot much more than, Albert and Arlene's weird love relationship that they were trying to get going, and honestly just felt like it was going on for way too long, and I'm glad that it got wrapped up in some way, but I'm kind of dreading the parts where Arlene is sending messages to Albert and whining about how she's not going to be able to see him again. That part I'm not looking forward to in the fourth book. I didn't like that Hidalgo died. I thought that was stupid. You took the most interesting character in the story and just killed him off for no goddamn reason. I was kind of hoping that maybe Flynn would have died instead of Hidalgo. That would have been way more interesting, because you would have had two characters getting to know each other throughout the fourth book, and yeah, I don't know. That would have changed the nature of it, though. That might have been too much of a shock to the overall plot, and probably would have altered things too much. This is why I don't write books, and I just talk about them online. What else? I like the idea behind the aliens. I like that both sides have been fighting for so long that they kind of have forgotten why they're fighting, and like the actual reason why they're fighting. And it all kind of boils down to just disagreements over like certain things, just certain interpretations of what's basically religious text, but not really. That felt a little bit more believable than certain things. That was kind of cool. The execution of it I thought was kind of stupid, but the overall idea behind why they're fighting was pretty awesome. And yeah, I really liked certain parts of this book, and I wanted that. Like, I wanted certain things in this book to be the main plot, but I kind of knew that they weren't going to be after a couple of chapters when certain characters just kind of disappeared. Overall, I did not like this book that much. I still think the first book is probably the best in this series. So, final thoughts on the third book in this Doom series. It definitely went off in a very strange direction that I'm not totally okay with, but it's been a very interesting ride so far, and I kind of want to see how they're going to wrap all this up, because I don't know, with this whole them ending up on an alien spaceship at the end that's going off in some direction that they don't really know, they created quite a problem for themselves. We've sort of just kind of abandoned Earth entirely, which, I don't know, it doesn't sound like it should work, but it might. And if you told me that some of the people who made the most recent Doom games over at the ones that have been published by Bethesda, if you told me that they read these books and took a lot of inspiration from them, I would not be too surprised, because it kind of sounds like that's what's happening, or that's what happened. I don't know. I don't really think I like this whole alien invasion plot as much as I like the demonic invasion one. But yeah, they did have to go off on their own direction, because we're way past the first two games at this point, and the third one wouldn't be out for a few years, so they definitely had to kind of stretch the plot out. I wonder if this had to be, like, if the deal they signed had to be 4 books, or if they just kind of kept going. That's one thing that I would kind of like to know a little bit more about. And maybe I'll find out more as I go into the last book. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll talk to you all later.